Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Congregational Church of Littleton's Facebook page. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. So, tonight, Wondering Wednesday, our reading from the Jesus Storybook Bible is, let's get to the page here, The King of All Kings, the story of the three wise men from Matthew 2. Far away in the east, three clever men saw the very same star. The star that God had put in the sky when Jesus was born. They knew it was a sign. A baby king had been born. They had been waiting for this star. They knew it would come. "He's here!" they shouted. "He's here!" And I'm sure, if you'd been there, you would have heard them laughing and dancing and singing until the sun came up. At dawn, they packed up their camels and wrapped gifts for the baby. They brought their most precious treasures of all, frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Special, sparkly, lovely smelling, gleaming things, just right for a king. The three wise men, actually, if you'd met them, you'd have thought they were kings because they were so rich and clever and important looking. They set off. They rode their camels across the endless desert, up steep, steep mountains, down into deep, deep valleys, through raging rivers, over grassy plains. Night and day, day and night, for hours that turned into days, that turned into weeks, that turned into months and months, until at last they reached Jerusalem. Jerusalem was by far the most important city for miles around. And as anyone could tell you, that's where a palace would be, and kings are born in palaces. So that's where they went. But they were in for a surprise. They went to sing King Herod. Surely he'd know where the baby was. But he didn't. In fact, he didn't like the sound of a new king. It made him cross. He didn't want anyone to be king except him. But Herod's advisors told the three wise men what was written in their books. What God had said about the baby king. Go to Bethlehem. That's where you will find him. Suddenly, the star that they had seen in the east started moving again, showing them the way. So the three wise men followed the star out of the big city, along the road, into the little town of Bethlehem. They followed the star through the streets of Bethlehem, out of the nice part of town, through the not-so-nice part of town, into the really not nice at all part of town, down a little dirt track until it stopped right over a little house. But wait, it wasn't a palace. And there weren't any guards, or servants, or flags, or red carpets, or trumpets, or anything. Did they get it wrong? Or was this what God meant? Sure enough, in that little house, there, sitting on his mother's knee, they found him, the baby king. The three wise men knelt before the little king. They took off their rich royal turbans and gleaming golden crowns. They bowed their noble heads to the ground and gave him their sparkling treasures. The journey that had begun so many centuries before had led three wise men here, to a little town, to a little house, to a little child. To the king God had promised, David, all those years before. But this child was a new kind of king. Though he was the Prince of Heaven, he had become poor. Though he was the mighty God, he had become a helpless baby. This king hadn't come to be the boss. He had come to be a servant. And that is the end of our story. Whoa! Let's think about this story. So the three wise men see the star, and they know that it's important. And they know that it's a sign that the baby king has been born. So they're going to go see this king, right? And where else would you find a king but in a palace? So where is their palace? In Jerusalem. So that's where they went. Looked at the star. They ended up in Jerusalem. And they went to see King Herod. I wonder how they felt when they found out that King Herod knew nothing about this baby king. And that wasn't there at that palace or in Jerusalem. Well, that star came back, and they followed it. They followed that star into a part of town in Bethlehem that wasn't a very nice part of town. It wasn't a rich part of town. And they stopped in front of a tiny house. So I'm wondering, as they're sitting there looking at that tiny house, what was going through their minds? What they might have been thinking. A king? A tiny house. Could this be right? Is this where we're supposed to be? I wonder about that. Could be many different things going through their minds. But you know what? They went into that little house. And then they saw Mary with Jesus on her knee. And they presented Jesus with the gifts. And it was a little bit surprising, to say the least, don't you think? Not a place where you think you would find a king. But God sent us a son, right? The king. Somebody who would be alongside of us and not rule over us, right? At the end of the story, as it was said, he had come to be a servant. Well, next week, we are going to read Heaven Breaks Through. Oh, I wonder what that story will be about. So, I hope to see you again next week, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.